If there are no questions, I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Those against?
Carried unanimously.
Good, we're moving along. Councillors, item 6, the Chair's report. It's self-explanatory. I'll open it up to any questions. If not, I'll move my Chair's report, seconded by Councillor Mark. Any debate? No debate. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against?
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. Now on item 7, external agencies, CCO reporting. Blair, we're in your hands.
So,
Kelvin first, I think.
yes, I was going to welcome Kelvin to come forward and present on the report for COLAB, but also the statement of intent. And Kelvin, I'm sure, will introduce Natalie as well. So.
Kelvin, a very
Thank you, kia ora koutou. Yes, look, I always enjoy having these discussions, so it's great to get the opportunity to come along and speak with you all this morning. Can I introduce my General Manager of Service Delivery, Natalie Allen.
Kia ora koutou.
So look, as I say, thank you. I really wanted to focus on the statement of intent and highlight a couple of points on that. I appreciate that you've also got the 6-monthly report in the pack, but obviously the draft statement of intent's been circulated. It was approved by the board back in March, and we very much welcome any feedback that Hamilton City might have on the draft before we send it to the board for final adoption in mid-June. As I say, there's a couple of things that we particularly wanted to highlight in the statement of intent. We've taken a slightly different approach with the statement of intent this year. Historically, we've had a part of the statement of intent covering the specific projects that we've been looking at. We decided not to go that route this time round. One reason for that is that we tend to move quite quickly on from those, so what we put in a statement of intent with respect to an opportunity can become quite outdated reasonably quickly. And the second reason is that we feel that we are better now at communicating updates on our projects to particularly council chief executives and the executive teams. So there's less need for it to be conveyed in the statement of intent itself. So beyond that change, I just wanted to touch on with Natalie two things. Firstly, our 3-year strategy, and secondly, the member charges that are coming up this year. Have we got a slide deck?
There is a presentation the elected members have in
Right.
the pack, which is attachment 3, elected members, on page 57. So,
Thank you, Bear. So that was the introductory slide. I'm now on the...
so I'm sure Amy might be able to find it. Yeah, there we go, Kelvin.
Perfect, thank you. So if you could just jump to the next slide. Thanks, Amy. Great. I'll turn over to Nat shortly to talk to the first of the those key points that we wanted to highlight, but I'm conscious that we don't come and see you all that often, so I just wanted to remind you, recognising that I had talked about this earlier this year to some of you at least, that our vision is that council collaboration through COLABs maximising wellbeing to each of your communities. And our purpose is to support councils to identify and realise opportunities that enable that to happen. At a very high level, the outcomes that we are looking for is a reduction in costs, the creation of value for our councils, and putting in place instances that enable innovation and change to occur. These outcomes build on a program of work that we started on last year, where we want to clarify the value of regional collaboration and that identified these buckets, if you like, of benefits. Slide. Thank you. Nat.
So our 3-year strategic goals for the company are in grey there. So we effectively are already operationalising these, but this is the first time that we have formally communicated these strategic goals to our shareholders. So the 3 strategic goals are, the first one is around our shareholding councils really understanding the value that CoLab provides, and that's about communicating the value, but also about measuring the benefits and the value and having the evidence and data to provide that story. The second goal is around delivering value by growing the scale of our shared service operation. We know that the purpose of shared services is really to provide the economies of scale, reduce duplication, and that is to deliver efficiencies. The third goal is really about our people. We can't achieve any of that without good, committed people. So this goal is really around making sure that we retain and attract talent so that they can do the best job they can every day. We've got specific targets and objectives against these goals, which are listed in the SOI in detail.
Cool, thanks. Next slide, thanks, Amy. So the other point to highlight was in relation to the financials. So, look, we, in developing the draft, took a look at our cash position and have made a conscious effort recognising the significant financial pressure that councils are under at the moment, made a decision to reduce member charges as much as we felt we comfortably could for the coming year. So across the region, that reflects about a $900,000 drop in member charges in FY25. It is a one-off reduction, and we're not doing it as by way of returning cash, because that has adverse tax implications, but rather we will simply be reducing what we would have otherwise charged councils in various areas within CoLab. And from FY26, we imagine it will return to more normal levels, if you like. But I should note that we always have a mindset of looking to reduce member charges wherever we can, and I hope that with scale we'll be able to do that over time. That's us. Happy to open up, Chair, to
Thank you.
questions.
I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. I know I've got quite a few. Colleagues, let's go with Councillor Maxine.
Thank you, Kelvin, and welcome, Natalie. Just on your final points there, it piqued my interest regarding the reduction of member fees. It's expected that this downturn will be longer than simply 2024-25 financial year. Presumably after that you'll be returning to usual fees, as you've called it. What other measures might you be able to take to keep in mind the kind of pressure that councils will continue to be under, but being able to then offer the range of services that you're currently offering and enhancing those?
Sure.
Gosh, long question, lots on it probably.
No, that's absolutely fine. So a couple of points there. Firstly, I would note that we're a pretty lean company. It's fair to say I find it a little scary at times how when I peruse some of the expense items in the budget, just how small some of those line items are. I'd love them to be bigger, but for the reasons you've just noted, and as I said earlier, we do try and keep costs down as much as possible. The second point I would make, and I sort of alluded to it, is look, we'll get member charges down when we create more scale within CoLab, quite frankly. You know, size for me is not ends to its in itself, but at the moment we simply don't have the breadth of services and the scale of services to get to a point where we are essentially self-funding, right? That's fundamentally what we're talking about. Nat mentioned that obviously one of our strategic goals is about growing our shared services, and that directly responds to that ability to move towards a more user-paced operating model, and that could be existing shareholders taking on additional services, but I'm also a big believer that there is opportunities for some of our services at least to readily scale up and be made available to councils outside of the region.
Yes.
And that would obviously then have a direct flow-on benefit to our shareholders, because it's a revenue source that we currently aren't tapped into.
And just in terms of that final point there, are we aware of other councils who agglomerate this back office services as you do for the Waikato? Is that replicated around other parts of the country, as you're aware?
Yeah, so look, there's a couple of other LASs. You might recall we were Waikato LAS initially. So there's a company in the Bay of Plenty, and there's also a company in Manawatu, Wanganui. They don't operate in the same way as CoLab does. So Bay of Plenty at the moment is very procurement focused, and in fact we do quite cross-regional procurement on some things. Manawatu, Wanganui is much smaller. It doesn't have anywhere near the resource that certainly CoLab does, but it does have two very good shared service arrangements, one around archiving and the second around debt collection. And both of those are proving incredibly successful. I think debt collection does servicing about 30 of the councils across the country now. And again, we'd tap into those. So if Waikato councils, for example, were interested in either of those two, I wouldn't be putting that up as a service for CoLab offering. I would be pointing you in the direction of Manawatu and leveraging what they've already got. But beyond those three companies, which are, as I say, quite different in their own right, there's not much else happening in a broader national stage.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Chair.
Councillor Anna.
Kia ora, thank you for your presentation. And I'm just looking at your statement of intent and your performance measures there around all shareholders taking up at least one additional shared service. That seems like a kind of a low bar to me, given that from my perspective you have, there's a lot of potential for cost savings and such in the shared services. So I also read in your right people, right place that councils that are in closer proximity to one another have the opportunity for perhaps more shared services or collaborative initiatives. So I just wondered if there might be a way of kind of breaking that up so that we might have a different goal or we might be able to achieve more shared services, for example, than say other councils. So yeah, I just don't want to set the bar seems a bit low for something that potentially has so much opportunity in it. So I'm just wanting your feedback on that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, look, a couple of things there. I guess that particular performance measure that you have pointed out, yes, it might seem low, but in some respects it does require us to expand beyond our current service offering. So we have we have 9 services at the moment. Hamilton City is involved in all 9, right? So unless we successfully stand up an additional shared service, there is no opportunity for Hamilton to contribute to that one additional service. I think that the other thing I'd say is that measure needs to be read in conjunction with the 24 new customers, because I think that's where the challenge will be. And
Right.
to be honest, I don't know whether 24 is a stretch goal. I think it's a stretch goal, but I don't really know. There is some logic behind how we've arrived at 24, but we're just starting out on this journey, so it's not an exact science by any stretch of the imagination, and if we think it's too easy, we'll push ourselves.
Yeah.
Rest assured, we will not be sitting on our laurels, irrespective of what's in those performance measures.
And I guess my other question is around the cost savings, because obviously that's one of our main interests in shared services. And it's hard to get the sense of what those are from your report and such, but I wondered if potentially that's partly to do with our data and our ability to share the cost savings to you so that you can report on it. And I just wondered about your feedback on that. Is some of that on us in terms of being upfront about what we are saving through you, would you say?
Look, I think, Councillor, there is an element of truth to that. And I say that only because I don't know what each council's spending on particular areas at the moment, right? So I can't therefore turn around and say, with this opportunity we've saved you X, because I don't have a baseline at the moment. Look, I've reached out to the heads of finance and chief executives, and we've got some ideas around how we might solve that and get greater line of sight. Having said that, the most readily available information where we can point to cost savings is in joint procurements.
Right.
And we have a number of those, right? And in fact, next week I have a meeting with some council staff, including from Hamilton City, to look at how we have come up with the value that we think we are providing to councils, and making sure that the council staff are fine with that. So our first strategic goal is about making sure our shareholders understand the value we're providing to them, right? So we've got this benefits library, as we call it, that those three different buckets of value that that we talked about earlier. We've got standardised ways in which we quantify value under each of those. And we need to get better at communicating that so that we can
it's
show.
really helpful for us to see that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Sarah?
Chair, thanks so much for the presentation this morning. It's good to have you guys here. I have a few questions. One is, firstly, there seems to be a low uptake of joint procurement, just looking at page 47 of the agenda. So that's the table with the service delivery and which councils are using which service. And I was just interested in what the barriers are there. So it's joint procurement contracts, procurement support and advice.
Oh, yeah. So look, we need to titivate that. So, sorry, you were looking at...
So it's page 7
Yeah.
of your
Look, that's...
statement of intent.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, that's not well represented. There are a number of contracts, joint procurement contracts, where a significant number of councils are involved. I mean, the most, beyond the professional services panel, the most significant one is our insurance collective, and all the councils are involved in that, right? This will be one of the things that we titivate in the final version. So the three councils that are referred to there is actually a particular type of procurement support. So we have a staff member that is funded by and provides procurement support to three councils because they don't have in-house procurement resource, right? That's what that column is actually focusing on, even though the heading references joint procurement. More generally, so sorry, it's a bit of a misrepresentation. Okay. Rest assured, there's quite a bit of joint procurement happening. I think there is still opportunity to do more.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to look at those. And any joint procurement that we do, even if even if not all councils are involved at the start, it's set up in a way that they can jump on at a later date and avail themselves of the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And we asked, we had a little bit of time this before the meeting started to discuss this, but for just keen to really understand what are the key benefits that we could, I guess, look at pursuing going forward for joint services, particularly for Hamilton City Council, and where do you see some of the key opportunities over the next 3 years?
Yep. So look, my personal view is we're barely scratching the surface at the moment. I still think that, I mean, the company itself's been around for a while, but in the way that it's resourced at the moment, it's still very much in its infancy. So look, we've just recently been talking with chief executives and CFOs, etc., around some new ideas on initiatives that we have, and they are around accounts payable and accounts receivable, around establishing shared services there. We're looking at shared services in the project management space. We're looking at payroll. There's a couple of holy grails for me, and unfortunately we've got neither of them across the line at the moment. One is a regional building consent authority, because I think there is a massive amount of replication in that area. And the second one is looking at, from an IT perspective, how we can be smart and create something together. We've had a few goes at that, it's fair to say, in different guises, and unfortunately we haven't had the support from councils to take those forward. But I don't really want to let them go, because I'm absolutely a massive believer in both of them.
Okay.
It's just getting us there.
Thank you. One more question at this stage, and that was just around Councillor Anna Casey Cox brought up, I guess, the target around one further shared service for each council. Is there the opportunity to have a subset of that target where it would be, at least 2 shared services are taken up by a group of councils, say the future-proof councils or whatever it may be, that I guess are close geographically, and if there was interest from those partners, could work, I guess, more quickly to investigate shared services?
You touch on a really good point. So, and my board chair talked to the chief executives at their forum in February about this. One of the things, because we're constantly evolving and trying to work out better ways of engaging with councils and developing opportunities at pace, right? So one of the things that we are quite focused on currently is, and this is part of the discussion that Nat and I have had with the CEs in the last couple of months, is identifying a smaller group of councils that are enthusiastic about a particular idea, and because they're enthusiastic about it, they will be happy to contribute time and effort and potentially dollars to developing that at pace, right? So if we try and get 12 councils working with us, we can only go as fast as the slowest of those councils, quite frankly, and it's, don't get me started, it's frustrating at times from an internal perspective, and I'm sure from those councils that want to move at pace. The reality is collaboration and doing stuff together is a bit harder, and we need to accept that. It takes more heavy lifting and more time and effort, but the value of doing so, I think, is massive. So yeah, looking for those councils, those smaller groups of councils that are really interested in a particular idea and working with them to develop that at pace is something we're looking at. But in saying that, and I guess this is the one shared service for, at least one shared service for each council and each shareholding council. The reason we've got that in there is across the suite of opportunities that we consider over a period of time, we have to make sure that there is at least something in those opportunities for all of our shareholders, right? Because we have to provide value to all of them. So it might be that they're only interested in one, but if there's more stuff, as you say, the future-proof councils and what have you, and they want to get on with it, then we will very much support that.
Yeah. I'd like to foreshadow, I'm just considering whether we put something, I guess, in terms of feedback, would it be best if it's formal, or just the feedback you've received already is sufficient? It just, in terms
You
of statement of
percolate on
intent,
that, you've foreshadowed it. I know the Chief Executive would like to say something. I can sense by your pressing of buttons and mannerisms that you're wanting to be unleashed.
Yeah, I just wanted to back up what Calvin's saying, because I'm actually a board director of CoLab, as some of the other CEs are, and the board's had a number of sessions around what we've called big rocks, and some of these projects, there's a variation of projects from smaller ones right through to some of the big ones that we've had going for some time. And just the answer to Councillor Anna's question is, Tracy and I can come back and tell you what value we're getting out of the contracts, both financial and non-financial. And I think, as Calvin's outlined, that sometimes it's a bit hard to quantify the non-financial benefits, like some of the right people, right places, and the learning and training, e-learning is, wider than just money and that sort of thing. So, but we'll come back to you on that. So the board's been looking at big rocks, as Kelvin said. So we work through a process to make sure that we look at what's also quite possible, and as Kelvin said, what's the appetite from different councils, and sometimes the appetite is strong or is varied, or it's strong and then wanes and that sort of thing. But I have to say, Kelvin's team carry out a very rigorous process to synthesise through that, and I just want to say to Kelvin and the team, I think you do a really good job on that, and I know those sorts of things can be frustrating, but also can generate big benefits. So what we'll be doing is, just with all the talk around Three Waters, which is sort of almost consumed everyone for the last wee while, is actually moving on from that as well, because every council's under pressure to look at some of those other bigger rocks. And I think the IT platform stuff has been something we've looked at for some time. That'll be a slower burn. So there's short burn, medium burn, and slower burns. And obviously sometimes you need to spend money to save money. So, but we can come back with some of those, and I'd like to, maybe workshop it with elected members just around some of those things to give you a bit more. And Kelvin and the team could probably come in, so in a more sort of informal atmosphere, we can probably have a pretty free and frank conversation about where things are going.
Thank you. I've got a few questions, and I know this has gone on for quite a while. I'm mindful we've got others groups to present, and I look forward to hearing from Councillor Sarah about her potential amendment. Calvin, just very quickly, and please be candid with us, what is the barrier that you keep encountering that is preventing CoLab from executing more projects that derive a financial benefit to the 12 councils that are members of CoLab? I mean, if you were to say one or two things, what is it?
Parochialism / patch protection. Councils consider themselves, quite rightly, a significant employer in their own district, and the prospect of that being diminished through shared services and the fear that it's somehow centralised, even though I'd never talk about that because I don't believe that, that's a concern. And then, change is hard, right? 70% of change projects fail. So there has to be a really consistent messaging and strong leadership right across the board, and directive to the staff that actually we think there is a value proposition in this idea. We are committed to putting resource and time and effort into progressing this because we think it's the right thing to do. So don't let your BAU get in the way of this project. It's a priority for the council.
Okay, thank you. I've got two more questions. In your years of experience and expertise, do you believe that there are millions of dollars to be saved, that ratepayers over the 12 councils wouldn't have to be funding if we glean the efficiencies that you believe are achievable?
Yes.
Thank you. To Councillor Ann's point, in some ways, are you too big? Oh, sorry, Councillor Anna. Thanks, Maxine, for that interruption. Have you become too large in the sense that, would it not be better to be smaller, closer, because you go all the way, all over the Waikato, and I see you now in the Hawke's Bay as well, a new member.
Western Bay of Plenty
Western Bay
become
of
a
Plenty.
shareholder. Yep.
Yep. Would it be better to resize where there's much closer boundary issues?
Look, in all honesty, I don't think that's an issue. I don't for a minute feel like the number of shareholders we have is somehow impacting on our ability to work effectively. In fact, quite the opposite, because as I alluded to, there are member charges, so as soon as you take some of those shareholders away, you're putting a greater burden on the remaining. But at a practical level, I don't see that impacting on how we make decisions. I mean, we've got a quite agile board. It was reorganised, so it's 5 chief executives, as Lance alluded to, plus an independent chair. Right. So it's not like we're having to get approval for a whole lot of stuff from all 12 councils. I think it's more important that we focus, as I say, I somehow make sure that we go through a process that captures who's enthusiastic about a particular idea and just work with those 3 or 4 councils. And we'll develop that idea, and we'll develop it in a way, as I mentioned with the joint procurement, that allows other councils to jump on board later on and down the track.
Right. Thank you. Now, Councillor Sarah, I know on page 15, item 1, the current motion is basically to accept receipt of the CoLab statement of intent. I'm assuming your amendment may make a recommendation to change, to express a stronger view of what you expect?
So I'm just, at the moment, I've just discussed very briefly with Lance, but I'm looking at requesting that a report come to the Future-Proof Implementation Committee on opportunities for joint shared services, including the key ones that were noted. I haven't yet got anything in regard to the targets in the statement of intent yet.
Okay. Really, today's scope is CoLab presenting the statement of intent. So you're out of scope.
Yeah.
This was your opportunity as a committee to send a clear message back to CoLab in what we expect out of the statement of intent. So
we could,
I'm
happy to then, so I guess I don't want to wordsmith, but if we add in there that the committee requests CoLab consider strengthening its targets regarding increased number of shared services taken up by councils. I mean, sorry, an adjournment could be helpful if we wanted to get some advice on wording, but otherwise that hopefully provides some clear intent.
All right. Give me a moment for a sec.
Chair, I wonder if it could be helpful.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this item aside, and I'm going to bring out Kelvin, are you available to stay a little longer? Wonderful. So I'm just going to push your item aside. That will give some time for Councillor Sarah to formulate an amendment. Meanwhile, we'll go to the next item. So I appreciate that. So I really don't want to break now for a morning tea. So would you mind? Cheers. Colleagues, so we're just going to put this item aside. And we're going to have the next item, and that will give time for Sarah to formulate something, and then we can bring it back, and we'll then be able to have questions and debate on that issue. Vanessa and team, nice to see you.
Good morning.
I'm sorry we've kept you waiting a little while. We're in your hands.
Uh,
I can give a quick, kei te kaikaunihira, tēnā koe. Just to sort of try to provide some, I guess, guidance, if I may use that term, in this report, just because there are so many attachments. Just wanting to remind elected members that the majority of these are simply aimed as updates to the committee. And attachment 8, which is the 2024-25 Central City Activation Fund plan, we are seeking approval for that plan. And then attachment 9 is the service level agreement, which we are seeking GM delegation to renew in the new financial year, given that this is an LTP year. But with that, I will let you provide an update.
Good morning, councillors. I am aware I gave you quite a lengthy report, so I've got a very short presentation. So I do just want to say that in the years I've been in this role, which is I think 7 now, it's probably the lowest business confidence that I have known to be out in the central city. Many businesses obviously facing the same challenging economic conditions that are nationwide, but it is tough out there, and unfortunately we also do have the statistics to back this up. We have rising vacancy rates, CBD spend that's not keeping up with inflation, and lower numbers of pedestrians on the street. So, as you know, when times are tough, often the first budget that gets cut is marketing. So we're very keenly aware of that and have been ramping up our efforts in the marketing space to help the general business community. Can I get the slide moved on? Does that move? Have I got... Oh. Yep, there we go. So this is just a quick look at some of the marketing efforts that we have been spending a lot of time with for the, talking about the business community, activities, stories across all our channels. So some of our highlights, obviously including our social media channels. If we can go to the next slide. As a general rule, the public's very interested to see new businesses that are coming in, new services, events, activity, what's happening. Oh, can I get the... what's happening in and around the CBD. So the next slide just shows some of the key social media activities and the good traction, the thousands of people, 48,000 specifically, people that are following our social media channels and the sorts of things that they're interested to see. We continue to invest, next slide please. We continue to invest in neat places. That independent endorsement has been a really, really key domestic tourism piece that we continue to invest in, and we do see the benefits of that. We spend, next slide, a lot of time on member events and looking for different ways to showcase the central city through these events beyond being in a traditional sort of business after 5 context. So we hold site tours, we've done neighbourhood meet your neighbours when new businesses have come in. We've done multi-business events where multi-businesses profiled in one evening, like a progressive dinner where we went and showcased many different businesses doing a highlight evening, and we continue to give business updates, particularly around development and activity. People are often curious about what the scaffolding represents, so we always like to do evenings that tells you what's behind the white covering or the scaffolding that may be seen. If I go to the next slide, we have great relationships with our local media, and we're very fortunate that we have a lot of stories coming out about the central city and activity happening there, a lot of positive stories, and I credit our local media with this, with being very engaged and wanting to tell these stories, so that's fantastic. And the last slide shows a great shot of our Central City Awards. That's all about that recognition and celebration of our Central City that we got to host in November last year, and also had the opportunity to have this on the riverbank, which is always a highlight, to be able to have activity or different activity that showcases the Waikato River. So that was just a quick overview in pictures, backed up by the many words used across the variety of reports submitted. And Mike and I are happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Well, thanks for that very brief presentation, Vanessa. It's appreciated. Some good information you've included. Colleagues, questions? Excellent. Councillor Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Ewan. Just before I do, that obviously we're here to discuss the activation plan and that sort of stuff, but there are a number of reports here, including the 6 monthly report. I'm presuming our questioning can cover those as well. Thank you. Yeah, guys, thanks for coming. And I just wanted, in the 6 monthly report, which is on our page 62 in our agendas, you talk about the challenges businesses are facing in the CBD, and you say it's imperative that they feel supported in our long-term plan. I just want you to elucidate on that a little. What would be the most, if you could think of 2 or 3 of the most important things that you need our council to do in order to give that support that you need, that your businesses need?
I'll take the first two and then I'll give Mike one. I would say the environment, the streetscape, is probably one of the key things. I will say that the central city as our front door does not look the best that it's ever looked. There's a number of factors contributing to that, but I think one of the biggest things that council can do, and I'm not necessarily suggesting new budget, I'm sure there's renewals budget as well, but that there is that investment put into actually tidying up the general surrounds. That's probably one of the key things that I think can be done.
Thank you.
The other one, which I'm hesitant to mention, but I'm going to anyway, is everybody park, is parking. Just leave it alone for now. I think there's a lot of change going on in the parking space, taking out the meters and putting in the kiosks, and there is a significant amount of comms that are needed in that space. I think to then go and change the offering on top of that in this, within this time frame is just the wrong thing to be doing at this time, and particularly with the challenging environment. I think it's just one thing that can be left as is, and that would benefit a lot of our businesses.
And I think the probably the other thing that and it goes sort of along with streetscape, is the amount of antisocial behaviour that's really in your face. The graffiti, the shopping trolleys, those simple things I'd really like to see council take a lead on, because that's really, we're all here to try and give people confidence about the CBD and what's going on and where we're going, but when you see that every day, it doesn't feel safe. Some of the stories I hear from people with businesses, we've had people come into our office, take bikes and stuff. If there aren't men in the office now, there's maybe a single woman in the office, we now lock the front door. That's an awful state to be. That really shows a lack of confidence. We hate doing it, but we sort of have to because it is all about safety. So just those things, that would be my take out from it.
Thank you. And Chair, just one quick supplementary question. Thank you for that. You've mentioned that, in your view, business confidence in the central city is probably the lowest in 7 years, Vanessa, and that the figures back that up. Your views on 2 hours free parking and keeping it are clear, so I won't belabour that point. But
Is there a question, my good friend?
there is. But you also mentioned, I noticed, commuter parking outside of the CBD and some concerns with that. You're supportive of charging for some commuter parking within the CBD,
Yes.
but you mentioned out of the CBD. Can you just elucidate on that?
Yes, so I genuinely do believe we've got quite a long CBD, and there is definitely roads that the 2 hours parking is to support shopper activity. There's definitely roads that don't have that draw card to that shopper activity that I think are underutilised currently and could be well turned into commuter parking and have been. I object to the outside of the CBD charges for commuter parking because I feel they're doing the right thing, not parking in the CBD, which is what we don't want to happen, but now we're charging them for it. So the surrounding roads, I really battle to understand that messaging. Don't bring more cars into the CBD, but if you don't, even though I get that it's the fringe, it's still outside of the CBD, so to me it doesn't warrant that parking. Or if it does warrant that parking, actually there's a whole lot of working areas within the city, but ours are the only workers that are getting charged for parking. So I think perhaps it could do with another look. Also, I will say that those people that are using those parks, we don't, I'm trying to think how to word this, but I would say it's not the higher income people that are using those parks. So it does feel like that it is a charge being put on perhaps lower income, lower wage earners.
And I think if you talk to businesses and you talk to them about their staff not coming in, it's the accessibility of parking and the cost of parking. That's probably the number one thing that's preventing their staff coming back in the office. And we want to make it easy for their staff to come back in the office, and then they can go shopping, and the office tends, we need more space. So again, it sort of morphs from one thing into the other.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
You're very welcome. Councillor Anna.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Thank you for your presentation. I wasn't going to ask about transport, but now I will because that's been a good conversation already. I wondered in terms of public transport, cycling and walking, like what your perspective is, I guess, on how that contributes to the vibrancy of the CBD or could, and just your reflection on.
Yeah, so very much opinion-led because I don't have any data around the cycling community in particular to be able to back this up, so it is opinion-led. And we genuinely are positive about having multimodal ways to travel around the central city. So I would say the scooters are part of that as well, and we do see a lot of people using the Lime scooters or other branded scooters around town. So I think that there is absolutely a need to have walking, cycling options in a connected way throughout the city.
Probably just on that, and I think that is really important, and it's always going to be a relatively minor part of people coming to work, but what we've noticed recently, I've got a couple of tenants, the end-of-trip facilities are really important, and quality end-of-trip facilities, not bunging a shower in a corner and somewhere you can park your bike. So I'm having a number of conversations with large building owners in Hamilton at the moment, some live here, some don't, about putting quality end-of-trip facilities within these buildings. You've just got to go and have a look, and if anyone wants to have a look, I'm happy to take you. The ones at Union Square are amazing. So again, it's not all council. It's also about some of the building owners that we've got to grab kicking and screaming.
Cool. Thank you. And just a question around, I guess, vacancies in the CBD, because we know that's an ongoing issue. But and I know you do work closely with so many organisations, including the arts sector and Creative Waikato. And there was a suggestion about some of these empty spaces and how they could be used potentially in an interim way by artists to sort of bring life into the empty spaces. I just wondered what your reflections are on that opportunity.
Yeah, So I will say it's been around for a number of years, and we have done a number of different times. We've done pop-up art activity in different spaces, some successfully and some not as successfully. So definitely not a new concept. But what I will say is there are some challenges, particularly around some of the buildings and earthquake strengthening and health and safety aspects. And so it's not always as easy as just saying a empty space and thinking that a creative opportunity could exist there.
Right.
In saying that, we have developed different creative opportunities where we can.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're working with Wintec at the moment on looking at a pop-up scenario in an empty space as a bit of a proof of concept
cool.
around a multi-retail opportunity. So it is on the radar. It's often just not as easy as we would like it to be.
Okay.
And sometimes it's landlords, like there are a couple of buildings we've had people look at, but they said, yeah, it's going to cost me 25 grand to get the building warrant fitness back into place for us to allow you to put a temporary in there.
Right.
We're just not prepared to do it.
Okay.
You know, a lot of landlords say it's just too much hassle. You know, we've got to change your insurance or a whole lot of things. So it's actually not that simple. It's interesting, and we've talked about it in the UK, if you have a charity type shop in one of your tenancies, I think there's no rates payable. You know, maybe if there was something council could do to assist a landlord as a sort of a joint venture, maybe there would be more uptake of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Thanks, Chair Ewan. Hello, Vanessa, Mike and Lehigh. My question relates to the flow-on effect of COVID, where everyone started working from home. What's your view on that scenario? Is it turning around? I mean, I hear stuff through my own channels, but I'd be interested to hear what you guys
Yep,
say.
absolutely. So a bit of a mixed bag, actually. There are some fantastic examples of business owners or property owners who have actually developed their space to encourage their staff to be, to want to come back into the office. I'll shout out Blue Wallace. They did a fantastic job of redesigning their space to make it so engaging that their people wanted to come in and work. I know that some of the Union Square tenancies, one of the tipping points to get those tenancies in place was that the calibre of building would mean that their employees would actually want to come in and be there. So there are some positive stories in terms of the returning workforce. I think that it is generally accepted that hybrid workplace does exist, which is great. You know, it can be great from a point of view of it gives employers another sell point to coming in and working for them, offering that hybrid environment. One thing that I will say is still quite noticeable is some of the larger organisations, and I potentially will say councils here, who tend to let a lot of people have a day, either the Friday or the Monday off. And I'm personally, I'm quite in favour of hybrid working. I think it offers great flexibility, but I think if it's a work from home scenario, it doesn't need to be always tagged on to a weekend, where it becomes more about a 3-day weekend perhaps than the work from home scenario in some cases. So I would say that there are perhaps still some larger employers that need to look and go, actually, you know, it could be a Tuesday, could be a Wednesday, because there are, I think, obligations that some of these large businesses have to ensuring that cities have predominance of workforce around and creating support of that local economy.
Yeah, I think it's all about environment and culture. Yep. And environment is the physical environment in the office, but it's also, again, streetscape and everything and safety and security that goes with it. And we don't have the problems that Auckland and Wellington have with the large corporates and a lot of government. People genuinely, when you talk to them, want their staff to be back in office, and most of the time their staff want to come back in the office if the office and environment and culture is good. So it's a part to do with council, part to do with business owners, part to do with building owners.
Sorry, one more question, Councillor Ewan. Do you think we could attract more people back to the CBD if we held some really kick-ass sporting events in the city? We've got some fantastic stadiums that I'd love to see filled.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. And I will say that sporting activities always draws a great crowd, and often it's a great crowd that will go to the sporting activity but also spend time at hospitality venues. Depending on the level of sporting activity, you might get people here 1 or 2 days before. So there's opportunities to support the retail environment as well. So yes, I'm a big favour of some large sporting activity, but I will also say I'm a big favour of any activity that draws a crowd.
Well, that also goes for cultural events
Cultural,
as well.
yep,
So,
absolutely.
I noticed
Creative, any
last
of it.
night they had the Joshua Tree tour with John Toogood and a whole lot of other, and I go, it's Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and I go, hold on, where's Hamilton in this? Yeah, there are a lot of events. I'd personally like to see more, rather than just 2 or 3 more. Volume would be great.
Drew.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot here with your
Brilliant.
business expertise, in particular transaction negotiations. If the government gave GST back to council, would you expect the government to collect money in some other way? So would you expect any net benefit to the people of Hamilton?
You would imagine they're going to collect it anyway, from one form or another. It's just sort of how it works. It was really interesting, and we had a presentation Property Council did a couple of months ago, and they brought David Norman, who's Chief Economist for GHD, who's former Westpac Chief Economist, and that question was actually asked by one of the councillors, and might have even been the mayor, on that topic. And his view was, instead of taking GST back, leave it with central government, but councils need to push back on some of the things you're providing should actually be provided by central government, not local government. So it's more about under whose umbrella some of these things fall, rather than redistribution of GST, which I thought was interesting.
Great answer, thank you.
I've just got a couple of questions. I've heard very clearly you'd like the ratepayer subsidised CBD parking delayed.
Yes.
You would like us to forgo some of the commuter parking revenue, and you would like us to remove rates from charity shops in the CBD. So that's
Can I check that last one? I thought there
Well,
were.
it's just an idea.
that was mine.
Right,
It was an
yeah,
example.
Yeah.
It was an example.
Yeah.
All right. So my question of you, the ratepayer subsidised parking, if we were to remove it, would create a hole of $4.5 million of lost revenue for council. Would you support an additional rate increase on commercial ratepayers to subsidise that, or should it be an additional rate increase across all ratepayers?
Sorry.
I'll repeat. It's a really simple question. You wanted that we would know that we would continue the ratepayer subsidised CBD free parking, and that creates a loss of revenue of 4.5 million. So I'm asking you.
Of order?
Sure. What point of order?
The accuracy of that 4.5 million, could you contextualise that? This is over how many years? I think it'd be fair for the chamber to understand over what period you're talking. This is not over 1 year.
Sure. The 4.5 million is a figure that we use in the long-term plan.
I thought it was up to 7 million in 1 year.
Yeah, so the no, well, it's a good question.
Good question.
Sure, but okay. Jeff, I opened the gambit with your initial question on parking, and I gave some tolerance. I'm comfortable in now trying to answer. It's not a point of order but I'm happy to try to answer the quantum, whether it's over the 3 or the 4 years. I know at some stage over the LTP, Councillor Louise is right, it builds to 7 million in 1 year. But I will certainly come back. But the bottom line is, it is in our LTP document. My question remains, if we were to forgo that revenue, is it the HCBA's position that council should rate commercial ratepayers to cover it, or should we rate all ratepayers to cover that subsidy?
Okay, so I'm going to give an answer that's a little bit of both. At the moment, we have a commercial differential in play. So I would suggest that commercially, the rates are already, what is it, 1.8?
1.8, isn't it? I
Yeah,
think,
the commercial multiplier is
double.
already in place, so I would say that the business community is already taking their fair chunk of paying more. In terms of putting it on the ratepayer, I would say that, well, one, the business community are also the ratepayers, so I think that's probably something that's quite, tends to be forgotten about when the business community gets talked about. It's like that they're this separate group. They're also rate-paying, personal rate-paying people as well, as business rate-paying people. From my understanding of rates, and obviously I don't work in the council rates department, so I may be slightly inaccurate here, but I understand that rates are about subsidising the greater good, and that a lot of people pay a rate for things that they might not utilise for the greater good of the community. So, for instance, I don't take a bus by my own choice, but I still pay for bus services because it's for the greater good for the community. Sure. I would suggest that having a central city that's thriving and contributing, again, possibly an old number, but around 25% of the GDP for the city would suggest that it's to the benefit of the greater community to have a thriving central city. And therefore, rates are across everybody to create that. So I guess my answer would be supporting that it sits with the general ratepayer, of which the business community is one of those. Absolutely. As well. But I also want to caveat that by saying we don't believe it's a forever after scenario. You know, free parking, subsidised free parking is something that is a good, and I would suggest even a need to have right now. But should it be looked at again in another year, 2 years down the track? Yes, absolutely, because the conditions are continuously changing. And therefore, it's not, I'm not sitting here saying 10 years we should also be looking at 2 hours free parking. No. But maybe, you know, it's one of those.
Because you've had 8 years so far.
Yeah.
Right.
Have we had 8?
Yeah. 2017.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You've answered it.
Yeah.
You've answered it.
One other point, and you talk about the 4.5 million.
Yeah.
What is the loss in revenue and turnover to the businesses that are impacted by that parking legislation requirement? I suspect their loss in revenue would be significantly more. If you're making
that's certainly outside of the scope of council's interest.
No, but if you're charging for parking, this extra revenue, that's going to impede people coming in. Therefore, that has an impact on the businesses in the city.
You're making an assumption there, but I sort of get. I get your idea.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, cool. All right. Any other questions of? No. What we will do today is we will get an answer for you, Jeff, before the end of the meeting of exactly the 4.5 over the period of time, because it's a fair question for you to raise. Right. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Great.
We're now moving on to let's come back to CoLab. I don't think, Calvin, we need you back in the seat unless there's questions. Sarah, have you emailed?
Yes, it was less straightforward than I thought, given some concern. But we've landed somewhere. So there's both the red there, and then I'm just noting the staff action around the further information coming back around the value to HCC.
Anybody have questions of the mover? I'm happy to include that in, well, in fact, Nobody's moved it, so if
No.
you want to move it, you can be the mover.
Sure.
You've got a seconder,
Would anyone like to, yes, Councillor Anna?
Councillor Anna.
I'm
So
sorry.
I think you've explained it. Any questions of the mover? Or any questions of the staff? No? Okay, well, because this is part of a broader resolution we're going to move at the end, I think I'll leave it there and we can cover it all in the debate and all at the one motion.
Chair, I've just got my colleague beside me kind of questioning what it's trying to achieve. Is it useful to just very briefly, without debate,
Absolutely.
explain that? So at this stage, after discussions with the CE and Calvin, we thought the most effective way forward would be for us to write directly to the board to express our strong support for a much more substantial move toward shared services and particularly noting what are the big rocks for us, which are building consenting and IT activities. And then also noting that it will be discussed further at a political level. So that's quite broad, but the intent would be that there would be proactive discussions with potential partner councils and that progress on that would come back to the relevant committee. There was complications around going too far outside the scope of this committee, but that's the intent.
Sure. I think that's quite clear, and people will have an opportunity to debate. Right, thank you very much. We'll now move on to the airport matter. Sean, I think you're presenting, and this is obviously an update concerning the letter of intent.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I won't belabor this item. Hopefully the report is pretty self-explanatory, but just to summarise, we had previously received, as we do every year, a draft statement of intent from the airport company, and we in turn requested that that the airport company consider a bit more fully how it states its intentions with regard to international services and also its intentions on dividend payments to shareholders. As a part of that, it was agreed or resolved that the Mayor should call a meeting together with the mayors and CEOs of the other shareholding councils to discuss the matter of their view on international air services and the extent of effort that the airport company put into that, and also the question on dividends. So that meeting was held. As I say, it was a Zoom meeting that was held between the CEs of the shareholders and the mayors, where they discussed both of those items. The outcome really from that discussion was general satisfaction from all of the shareholding representatives or mayors with the conduct of the airport company, and acceptance of the work that they currently do towards trying to secure international air services where they can. But they did agree that perhaps the statement of intent should be a bit more explicit in the way that was put forward than it currently was. With regards dividend payments, they generally agreed with the dividend policy that the airport company had produced and is referred to in the statement of intent. There was pretty clear direction coming back and consistent direction coming back from those people on that call that they weren't at all comfortable with the notion of shareholders asking the airport company or instructing the airport company to provide more dividends, which would cause them to either borrow money to do so or sell assets to do so. So they were happy for them to work within the precepts of their dividend policy. So what you have in this paper is a revised statement of intent, which has the wording changed, and you'll see a number of areas within it that refer to international air services, and in particular under the key objectives for rail section, you'll see there's a number of paragraphs that refer to aviation and international air service efforts that the company will put in place. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jeff.
Thanks, Chair. Sean, yeah, thanks for that. Can you just remind me how many directors the airport board is down at the moment?
Well, it has a full quorum of directors at the moment, but we have 2 vacancies which require to be filled. There is a thought under the Constitution, it allows for actually a third vacancy to also apply, which may be added to the board because of the increase in business and activity, especially with the property development work. Right now we have a shortlisting process for the appointment of new directors going through. Wednesday and Thursday this week there are interviews being conducted for the shortlisted candidates, and once there is a recommendation that comes out of that process, we will come back to the next meeting of this committee seeking this committee's approval for those appointments that are recommended by the panel who's doing those interviews, and that's part of the standard or ordinary process that we do when we need to replace directors.
How long have there been vacancies on the board?
We had probably around 8 months, I guess we had that. We did have
8 months?
We went through a process where we looked at recruiting directors, and that process didn't really end up with a good result, and so we decided to go back to market.
Right, okay. So 8 months that we've been, the board's been...
Correct,
has
short,
had vacancies
but I
on
would
the board.
I would stress that that's 1 vacancy short, but I would stress that it has had a full quorum. We now have the resignation of one of the board members as well, Margaret Devlin, who's returning to the UK, so that's caused that second appointment.
Okay. Can I put it to you that that's an awful long time to have a vacancy on a board like that, 8 months?
Yes, you can, and it's certainly not ideal, but as I say, the earlier process we went through as we reported back to the committee here really did not give us the result that we were looking for to bring up the right candidates, and we've taken another approach which has been much more fruitful in terms of a good selection.
Okay.
You have to remember the scheduling quite often is very challenging because this committee, for example, meets 4 times a year, so depending on how the timings flow, things can, get drawn out. There are times when I sometimes wonder if we should all call for a special meeting of the committee on director appointments to make sure we can speed that process up. And I'm not putting that on this committee, I'm just saying sometimes, depending on how overall timings go, it can be challenging.
Okay, and so the next Economic Development Committee and PX will have...
That's our plan. Okay. That's our plan. Although, if you don't mind, Chair, I will signal that we may, depending on the Chair's view, we may even seek to come to this committee earlier than the next Economic Development Committee and ask for a special meeting to consider that because of the time frame.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sean, just following up from that point, is it true that, in fact, late last year you highlighted the need to resolve the director issue, and I certainly agreed to you to bring the appointment of directors to a council meeting that meant it would be very efficient?
Yes, that's correct, actually, and I apologise, I forgot that.
So, so you forgot that, okay. Thank you. In the statement of intent, which I'm now quite pleased with, I note that the airport is expressing its intention now to complete the works that would be required for the border agencies. Is that your understanding?
Yes, so effectively when the question of border agency was raised last at this committee, the airport company was in discussions with the government agencies concerned. They've now completed those discussions and they have come to a resolution on how the border agencies could be stood up if need be, if there's an opportunity for international air service activity. So they've actually resolved how that can happen should the need arise.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. I've got no other questions. Colleagues, I know we are waiting for James to come down just to answer your question, Jeff, before the debate, because I think that would be fair. No.
He's working on it, but he's not going to build it at the moment, so
Oh, okay.
we'll give the information during the meeting. but
Right.
not-
Oh, okay, okay. Because you know, you had a fair question, and I had remembered it from a document that I got prepared for an LTP slide presentation, and I know the 4.5 million, but I couldn't answer you over what period. Yeah.
Chair, that's fine. It wasn't actually a point of order, I should say. I was really just wanting some context over the figure, just.
Yeah. And you deserve that context, and I'm trying to make sure that happens.
As soon as I've got the information, I'll bring it to you.
Okay, so in which case, colleagues, let's look at the motion for on page 15 with the amendment that Sarah has made. And so you'll see that it encapsulates all of the external agency presentations that we've had today. I'm going to be a liberal with the timing for speakers. I'm using my discretion in light of the fact that there are 3 very clear issues. I've got a mover, it's Councillor Sarah, seconded by Councillor Anna. If there's no further questions as to the motion, I open it up for the mover of the motion, Councillor Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. This morning I'd like to speak on the CoLab report and the opportunities that I think that presents us. I think there's a key opportunity to achieve more with the funding that we have and to reduce further costs. But there's also opportunity to do this without reducing the services that we provide to the community. We've heard that shared IT services and a regional building consent authority are 2 big opportunities that we could pursue that could achieve cost efficiencies. And there are other opportunities as well, including payroll, accounts and project management. And so the motion today, the intent is to provide clear direction and mandate to be more bold in pursuing shared services with our neighbouring councils. However, obviously you cannot have shared services with only one party. And so a really important part of this will be actually our job in working with our neighbouring councils to get them on board and to get them to buy into a more transformative approach to shared services. We know that we are all facing massive cost pressures, but we also don't want to keep whittling away the services that we provide to the community. And so this is a really critical opportunity that we should pursue with great focus. I would ask that staff do report back to a relevant committee on the progress on those discussions with neighbouring councils so that we can all stay in the loop and all, I guess, keep everyone involved accountable, ensuring that we do make progress this term. It would be fantastic if the next time that CoLab comes back to report to us that we have some real tangible progress on some of these additional shared services. Thanks.
Councillor Jeff.
Chair Ewan, want to touch on two of the issues. The HCBA report today, which I think showed some real concerns, which were brought to our attention, and you know, to hear suggestions of the lowest business confidence in 7 years is really concerning, really worrying, and I think we can see it to a degree. And look, there was a clear message there on keeping 2 hours free as long as possible. And I reiterate, it's only 333 parks out of a very big CBD that we're talking about. And we've heard a figure mentioned today, which may or may not be accurate, but I would suggest to you that whatever that revenue figure is, there is an opportunity cost to us if our CBD is struggling. There's an opportunity cost for us in terms of businesses not doing well, in terms of businesses, the value of businesses, in terms of the rates take that we get, in terms of the impact on us if there's a reluctance to invest in the CBD. That will reflect on our revenue as well. And I sincerely hope that our council is going to listen to the message we got today. In terms of the airport, I thank the board for the updated draft statement of intent, which I think is more in line with what some of us were after in terms of an openness and a readiness to new aeronautical opportunities. I have to say I still do find some frustration with the bureaucracy which we seem to have been, the whole shareholding arrangement is cloaked in. I've never worn a straitjacket, which may surprise some of my colleagues, but I haven't. But I imagine this is what it actually feels like a little. You know, we've got a 50%, a half shareholding in this huge asset right on our city border, and yet we really can't do a lot. We're dependent on our colleagues, and no disrespect to our shareholders, but I sometimes do sense passivity, almost a somnolence in their approach to the airport, and it does suggest to me sometimes that looking at selling some of our shareholding, going out to market, has no downside really, because you would find out what the airport is worth in the eyes of others, and you can act or you don't have to act, and it has two possible advantages. One, it much needed income, gee, we could do with that. Secondly, it may just inject some imagination, ambition into our shareholding relationships. And so I think it's something that we should think really carefully about, because 50% actually isn't worth a lot if you can't do anything, if you can't really do a lot. And even to sell a share of that to some other operator who has different ideas, fresh ideas, may shake things up a bit. And it's something I intend to suggest in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeff. Councillor Anna.
Yeah, I just want to build on, I guess, what Councillor Sarah has said around the huge potential of shared services. And as Calvin said, you know, we're just scratching the surface of the opportunity here. And you know, we're letting, I guess, patch protection potentially get in the way of some real opportunities. But I don't know if our council is to blame for that, really. We're on board with everything, it seems. So we just need to keep going in that direction. In terms of the Central City, the Business Association, I really, you know, think they do such good work for our Central City, and I want to acknowledge that. And in particular, their mention of the importance of streetscapes and having, you know, a tidy environment and the value that our public spaces bring. I think that's really important to hear as we go into the LTP in particular. What I understand from Vanessa is that she's suggesting a delay in the implementation of the paid parking, and that there is information in our LTP diligent packs around what that would cost us in year one, which was 1.3 million. But I also appreciated Vanessa's suggestion or support for, I guess, multimodal transport, because, you know, we really want people to be able to bike, walk and catch buses into the CBD. And it's still, you know, it's pretty tricky. I biked in this morning and always feel like my heart's in my mouth on multiple occasions, because it's still scary to bike on some of our roads. So there's still work to do there, and I don't want to lose sight of that, the importance of that as we talk about parking, because it's actually, you know, getting people moving differently that's so important for our vibrancy in the CBD as well. Thank you.
Colleagues, just before I ask the next speaker, you've now been circulated an email from staff regarding the parking question. It was 4.3 million over the first 3 years. So, council colleagues, I apologise. I think I used the term 4.5. It was clearly 4.3. So I'm sorry for that $200,000 mistake. And we've now had it clarified. It's over the first 3 years. Okay, next speaker is Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. Mike Neal talked about some functions of council being potentially removed as a way of improving things. CoLab Shared Services sees an opportunity to amalgamate some functions. There is a great article in the current Waikato Business News this month that supports this, which I encourage you all to read, mainly because the author bears a striking resemblance to George Clooney.
Excellent. Councillor Mark.
Thanks, Chair Ewan. I was expecting a bit more from Councillor Bitterding, but I'd just like to start off by saying, firstly, Councillor Jeff, some of the words you've used this morning have been quite, well, I'm starting to look for a thesaurus. I think we need one. Discombobulating, exactly. Yeah, no, his choice of words has been quite good. Look, my debate focuses on two parts. One is I titled A Tale of Two Cities, which I stole from Charles Dickens, and I'd like to highlight New York City and Brisbane in particular, and the revitalisation that both those cities went through during their time. New York in the 70s was a horrible place full of crime, economic downturn, and all that sort of thing. They turned it around through good investment in streetscapes and promoting economic events that led to strong economic outcomes and good cultural, social and economic vitality. So such things as I said, beautification projects and the like. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought, so I've got two sets of notes going on. Brisbane was the same. And full disclosure, I was born there, so I have a strong link to that city. And you've all heard my support of the mighty Brisbane Broncos as well. But what's the through beautification comes a pride of place, and I think what that does is promotes that soul within a CBD. The other thing which some of you may find interesting to hear me say is let's make the central city more pedestrian friendly. You know, these are some of the things that we need to do, and then of course the third thing is events, because events create they contribute to the circular economy, which is money travelling around within our city. And quite rightly, as I think it was Vanessa may have said, business district ratepayers are also community ratepayers as well. And if we've got good stuff happening in the CBD, money will flow throughout the CBD, throughout the whole economy. And then just on the CoLab piece, if I may, I'd just like to say another cliche I pinched was from Aristotle about the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So I love the work that CoLab are doing, and I think that there's huge opportunity for us to do more. Thank you.
Councillor Cash.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. I just wanted to just to make a really quick point. First, I just want to support what my good neighbour here, Councillor Jeff, has to my right, to my very right, has raised, and then to my far right on the other side there, Councillor Mark. Yeah, who I've seen pull out a dictionary a couple of times already. But, you know, just a quick point around the central city, and first to thank Vanessa, HCBA, for coming in and for sharing their insights this morning. And, you know, supportive of their position in terms of the parking discussion and also multimodal transport options. What stood out to me is the distinction between commuters versus shoppers, and you know, their position around the free parking, you know, free for 2 hours in the short term. She specifically said it was to attract more shoppers, and I think that's the distinction that I took from it. And when I think about our central city as a shopping precinct, I also think about, you know, what we're competing against. And so, you know, we all want a vibrant central city, but who are we competing with? And is it the shopping mall? Is it the base? And I think we need to take an economic outlook as to who our competition is and how does council help our central city to form a stronger position. And if we overlook that competition aspect, I think we're just going to miss the mark completely, and we're going to drive shoppers out. So I'm looking forward to the discussion when the LTP comes, because it will be a discussion around, revenue versus marketing versus how we position ourselves in the overall Hamilton market.
Thank you. Colleagues, I'm going to speak now. There's no one else, and I intend to cover all three items because I think they're really important. Can I start by starting with CoLab? The most salient point I heard in this chamber today is from Calvin, that there are millions of dollars on the table that have gone uncollected because councils are not working better together. It astonishes me that we don't have a shared HR system. It astonishes me that we don't have a shared payroll system. And the ratepayers are paying through the nose because so many councils want to protect their own little silos. And they defend their position by trying to say, oh, it's arrogant Hamilton wanting to dominate, and we're accused of the need for that we want to amalgamate. What they are forgetting to say to their ratepayers, who are all facing a rate increase, that they've chosen not to participate in initiatives that would save them millions of dollars. CoLab is one of our best opportunities. CoLab could deliver 12 councils tens of millions of dollars of savings. And I am sure the directors and the team at CoLab are aware of the potential, and the biggest battle are EMs, elected members, who are trying to protect their patch. And I wonder if the ratepayer appreciates that. HCBA, I'm always impressed by Vanessa. She's passionate. She sings a really clear song. But for the first time, what I appreciated about her is she accepted that if there's a foregone amount of revenue, the 4.3 million in the first 3 years, that yes, her argument is that the ratepayer should pay for that. And at the end of the day, and this is a critical point, I don't enjoy trying to take something away when we've already given something to people for free, right? But the question that you all have to ask yourself in the LTP is, how do you fill the hole? So if it's so convincing, you've got to cut something else or increase the rates. What you cannot do is borrow the difference. And my final point on the HCBA, and I think this is to you, Councillor Kesh, the one thing this council does more than anything to protect the CBD is called our district plan. The day that this council enabled the base to occur was the death of the CBD. The day this council amended its district plan and provided primacy to the CBD, that requires in statute that quality office complex happen in the CBD. They can't happen anywhere else. We have chosen a winner. It's the CBD. So those who are complaining about what council is doing, they are being selective. They're forgetting to stand up and say, oh, but we thank you for making sure that there's not a repeat of the base. Because there can't under our district plan. I think elected members have to familiarise themselves with their own planning documents. We have made the mistake, we've changed, and we've now protected the CBD. So please be mindful of that. My final point on the airport. Mark, I heard you talk a lot about economic development and the importance of it. Can I remind this council that if our airport had the facilities, they had a credible inquiry of an international airline 8 or 9 months ago. I can speak with some authority. An international airline flying into this city will pump tens of millions of dollars of real economic development, and we've missed that opportunity, and now we're chasing our tail. We're chasing our trail to try to catch up. And we had always been promised, you didn't need to lengthen the runway, we're open for business. But in fact, what we discovered is we didn't need to lengthen the runway, but we weren't ready to respond immediately when the inquiry came. And we left opportunities on the ground. I agree with Councillor Jeff. I reckon the bureaucracy that surrounds this airport needs correcting. And I think the way to do it is for Hamilton City Council to go out to the open market and sell some of its shares. Go out and ask the global market, are you interested in this? Now I know ultimately if they respond and they are interested, we've got to offer that to our other shareholders. But do our other shareholders have the appetite or the capacity? What we need is we need a commercial player sitting around that airport table saying, here's our vision. Again, we are left with the responsibility of doing what's right, not what's easy. That's it. I'll move the motion. All those in favour say aye. All those against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Morning tea. We'll go for 10 minutes and then we'll be back for item 8. It was quite fascinating. We're now on item 8, the General Manager's report. Blair.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. Just presenting my revised outcome summary report for the committee's visibility. So this report summarises the purpose of the committee and the key outcomes that we set, or the committee set at the start of its term. And I have presented that in a slightly different manner in attachment 1 to sort of provide a more of a descriptive commentary against the outcomes. And you'll also notice in paragraph 8, there's a number of our achievements and outcomes that staff and the committee have delivered over the last quarter, and I've just brought some of those to your attention. So we do canvass the vast majority of these matters throughout today's agenda, but certainly the items identified in paragraph 8 in particular are relevant highlights that the committee can certainly look at as part of the portfolio. And you can see there it's a very wide selection of things that have an economic angle to them. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Blair. So, item 8, the attachment there. Colleagues, questions of Blair on the report? Blair, the report was so good, you've silenced 12 elected members.
Well, it's great to see that the work of the team has been recognised. So thank you.
All right. I will move, seconded by Councillor Jeff. Any debate? No debate. I'll move. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Item 9, young Mike Bennett.
Thank you, Chair. Just to get clarity, is it best or do you prefer if I just speak to the economic development portion, we take questions and then move through that way?
That'd be ideal, and then we'll put the motion at the end.
Yes, and I know I stand in between you and Tiki, so I will be brief.
And Tiki's usually very popular.
Yes, Tikipedia. So I thought you guys had all heard that before. I have Arif Khan here, who's our business relationship advisor. If you do have any questions, I'll take the report as read, but highlight 4 really quick points. We talk about employer engagement in this portion of the report. Last year, Arif joined us, I think, in January or February, and really just jumped into the role and absolutely smashed it. And again, we've spoken a lot here about how that engagement and that role is core, foundational to what we do in this program. So again, those aren't tick box meetings, cup of coffee and a handshake. They're really deep engagement, and that investment of time that he put in over last year is really bringing dividends in terms of that being not just a point of contact for when there are issues, but that true engagement on how these businesses are looking to grow here and expand. So that report will be, his full report gets cut into two halves of the year. That first half will be at the next meeting in August. One quick point to highlight, my second point on the sector work. Obviously, we're hearing a lot about some of the struggles that various businesses and sectors are having. Tech continues to be one that stands out differently. So there are continuous notes that we're getting and anecdotes that will be part of that August meeting. As a side note, I was at an event last night at IT Partners, just in Ham East in their new building, and it was amazing. Not only are they hiring, but they had probably 75 different people there from across Hamilton and other places, non-tech businesses who were there for an event to learn about how tech, in this case it was the Copilot AI Microsoft function, but it was really interactive, really fun. All businesses that are looking to invest in technology as a way to improve their businesses, and if they're doing that with Hamilton tech businesses, even better. Third point on Tech in the Tron, again, the link's in the document. I really do encourage you to absorb it. It's really become quite a passion project for us. The results are quite good. I think the report the team gave me, followers are up 93%. So we're up about 1,100, maybe just under, on LinkedIn, and then across social media. The content pipeline for that continues to be set through July, I believe, and then we're looking to take that messaging and activate it with more we can discuss in the future about how we really, it's great that that content's there, but how do we turn that into action and meetings and in the end results, which is more companies being here. And then lastly, I was hoping Simone was here, but just wanted to touch on our shaping narratives. The work that we were able to do in partnership with her on that 7 Sharp piece. I know it's just a 3-minute thing that comes and goes, but it was 2 weeks of really kind of putting things together, making calls to CEs, getting it all together. And in the end, I think, although there was a comedic take to it, I thought it really did underscore some key points that we're going to continue to message quite directly and boldly over the next 6 months. And with that, we'll take questions.
Excellent. Councillor Mark.
Chair Ewan, thanks for your...
Famous authors or...
Well, I see Tiki's got her Tikipedia. I want to be Markipedia. Sorry. Just a very high-level question. Mike, thanks for your report and great work, Arif, on the things you're doing out there. I'm hearing good stuff in the business community, so it's very good. Point 11.1, 11.I.C, where we talk about the indicators for the Q3 or 4 could bring early signs of market improvements. Just at a kind of a high level, can you give me a bit of clarity on what those indicators would look like? Like, what do we look for?
So, yeah, thank you, Councillor Donovan, for that question. The metrics is quite wide-ranging, and it was quite a high-level discussion when it comes to when businesses are looking for things to change. And that really speaks to the short-term business decisions they're making. And we've heard in the news and we've heard directly through interviews that a lot of businesses are going through some restructuring processes. A lot of businesses are actually holding off on such activity as well, based on that expectation and feeling. The Q3, Q4 metric, a lot of it ties to the expected changes in the capital space, so changes from the Reserve Bank and other changes in the markets that businesses are anticipating, which might come later in the year.
Yep. And my second question, that's probably a little bit loaded, but when times are tough, other companies look to potentially relocate. Is there a feeling or a sentiment being expressed that we're starting to see the impact of businesses moving out of Auckland and other regions to come to, say, Hamilton, if not Waikato in general?
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. I think it's more, it's not an easy thing to do, particularly around talent, retaining talent in this market, and then just the business disruption of it. But to that end, that's exactly why I think for the remaining part of the year, we are going to be very aggressive in reminding people of our value proposition. If you are looking to readjust your business, tap into new labor markets, really change your operating structure, people are very willing or more willing to hear that now than another time. So we've seen it happen. Kmart's a great example, and the results of what they're achieving here are through the roof. So we're going to continue to positively shine a light on those who have done it and found success, and encourage others to consider.
It's good, thank you. And yeah, as I say, it's a language I love hearing, so keep up the good work.
Councillor Anna.
Thank you. Just a question around your proactive employment engagement and growth enablers. I just noticed the comment around the transportation network across Hamilton being a differentiator from other markets, and I just wondered if you could just explain that a little bit or elaborate.
So the expressway is regularly cited as a huge enabler of that, and with specifics to access a range of housing, it's the ease to get around Hamilton, and if you look at for example, a 40-minute commute shed, you've got a wide variety of housing options for employees and employers alike. Similar commutes just outside of Hamilton if you're living in Cambridge, Tamaheri. It's an easy transportation time to get into Hamilton, to get into work. If you're living in the city, easy to get around. That's sort of what that point's speaking to.
Okay. And is there recognition, I guess, of the growth of Hamilton and the potential for that commute time to not be so good unless we invest in alternative modes or public transport? Is that part of the
There is a
thing you're
recognition,
hearing as well?
and I think we've spoken to this in previous reports in 2023 around manufacturers recognising the need for better public transport and willingness to work with council partners, whether it's local government or regional, on that matter. And we stay connected with our counterparts at the regional council and to pass on that feedback and to work with them, support their plan on the regional transport plan.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Max.
Thank you. I'm just interested in the employment outlook. You talk about discussions with the businesses that you've engaged with. Do we also have insights into the large government departments we have locally, and perhaps some of the impact of shedding of staff that's happening through that sector, and what impact that might have on our local sectors and environment here in Hamilton?
Thank you, Councillor. I don't think I'm the best person to speak to that. The scope of my work and the engagement that I do is quite focused on the three key sectors: the manufacturing, logistics, and the tech and innovation space. Tiki might have some more information on that later on.
Cool. We can save that for Tiki. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Arif and Mike, could you expand on how successful Tech in the Tron is, and why it's doing so well, and what could it mean for Hamilton in the long term? And could you also just cover how it's being funded and why that's so exciting?
Absolutely. So I think for a long time, and this is true of many sectors, is that those who are in it don't often all get together and speak as a collective voice. And that's the role that we play, is that we, when this started as an idea maybe 2 years ago, it was a way that we could go to businesses and understand what their core need was, and what they came back to us in that sector was talent. And again, remember, 2 years ago was a different economic time, but it was all driven by talent, and they felt like collectively there wasn't enough attention or awareness about the opportunities that were here in Hamilton in the tech sector. So the approach that we took is to be both a mirror and a megaphone. It's the way that I like to term it. Is all we're really doing is sharing. We're not creating a message. We're not creating a sector. We're just sharing the really cool stuff that's already going on here and doing it to as broad of an audience as we can. And so we've got engagement up and down the country from people who said, "I didn't know that," and then they continue on their sentence. So I think the reason it's been so successful is that it's something new that they didn't know about, those who aren't here. I think it's also done in a highly professional way. To your final point, I think we've been able to rally funding support, so that's not council funded, apart from the time that myself and others put into helping guide it. but there are writers, social media people at the event yesterday. Because of the funding we get from these tech businesses collectively, we were able to have a photographer and a videographer there. That'll turn into a story. And again, it's authentic, it's genuine, it's not some PR firm doing it. It's the industry led by us in partnership telling their stories, and it's about people, really. Best story always wins. Some of the individual stories on the page talk, it's that value proposition messaging coming from a tech professional. So if I'm a tech professional sitting in Auckland or Wellington, and I see myself reflected in those stories, and we're very purposeful about the people who are featured, so that somebody from a wide spectrum of talent, well, there's a great Rocket Spark story about what they're doing to empower females in the tech space. So again, it's that authenticity, it's professionally done, it's really engaging, and I think we've only scratched the surface. I think with continued support, we can take it much further than it currently is.
Excellent, thank you. Right, no other questions? We'll move on to the next item. Arif, just a quick thank you for all the work you're doing. We know you're doing a lot of good work. Yeah. Tikipedia, Tiki. It's now branded. We're all going to have T-shirts.
She's lost for words.
If I'm lost for words, but thank you so much for sharing that publicly, Mike. So just a quick thing, a note first on slide 4 on page 131. I was probably living in denial that we're still in 2023. It is 2024, so it should be March 2024 on that slide, which you may have skimmed over and assumed anyway. So just a couple of key points. Obviously, as you've heard, we are officially in a recession. Realistically, people on the ground have been feeling like this for some time. And if you look at the last 15 months, there's only been one quarter, for New Zealand, one quarter where we have been in positive growth. So it's been a tough time. It still is a tough time, and it will continue to be a tough time for probably the next 1 to 2 years. And that's really important to remember in the context of everything that's going on. We are definitely seeing this in our consenting numbers. The number of consents lodged in Q1 this year was the lowest we have seen since 2011, which is obviously that post-GFC period. If we don't have consents lodged, we can't grant consents. So just as a heads up to councillors, these numbers will look pretty sad for quite some time, I suspect. On the plus side, there's still a massive pipeline of projects there. They're consented, they're waiting, and they're probably waiting for conditions to improve. If you think about a project, essentially a house can sell for what the market is prepared to pay. And if everything else is going up and what you need to cover all of the elements of the cost to build, the cost of finance, all of those things, if it outweighs the cost of the price you can sell for, it's not a viable project. And so we know that a lot of people are sitting on consents, both for commercial and for residential projects, and they're just waiting for that market to improve. Arif touched on that there are broad indications that interest rates should start to come down. Banks seem to think the end of the year, RBNZ is sticking with the beginning or the first half of next year, which will ease a lot of that spending. Another big component, as you touched on, was job losses. If you look at what's happening in the public sector, 3,500 to 5,000 jobs are on the line. We don't know exactly what's happening in Hamilton. What I do know is that it is affecting our representatives of local, central government. It is affecting them. They are being restructured. We don't yet know how that's coming through or how that's landing in terms of numbers for Hamilton. But the bigger issue is that it's making everybody feel insecure about their jobs. And when people see this public announcements of all these cuts all the time, they are going to sit on their money and they're not going to spend because they start to worry about their jobs. Even if their company is quite secure, they will still start to worry about their jobs. So it has quite a big flow-on effect and a roll-on effect to how people then use their money. And of course, interest rates are still really high. People are still moving from slightly lower to slightly higher rates. So it all feeds into a big kind of messy and unhappy cauldron of the economy at the moment. It's a 2 year kind of outlook of that kind of troubling for some people being really concerned about stuff, or well, what if they go back up again? Inflation's not quite where we want it to be. So yeah, sorry for the depressing picture, but I think it's important to have that context. And we're seeing lots of little things happening. So just be aware when I talk to you next time, it will probably be not that exciting.
Yes, we're just noting this is actually a deliberate engineered strategy, isn't it?
Yes, correct. And I said that in the report, I think I mentioned that this is what the RBNZ wants to achieve. This is the way that they see us bringing inflation down. And from that perspective, we're right on track. It's exactly where they want the country to be. So that's important context. We've got this, but it's working to bring down inflation, which is also negative for the economy.
Excellent.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions, but I always let colleagues go first. Colleagues. While you're stewing on questions, Tiki, thank you for all your insights. This may be a hard question to answer. You've given some time frame, sort of 2 years of not doomsday, but low-hanging cloud. Can you give me an insight as to the likelihood of the pace of improvement when the Reserve Bank stops what they're doing? That's the first question. And can you help me understand how we as a council can best position ourselves between now and that 2 year to prepare for the inevitable uptake?
There's some great questions. Firstly, I think we need to be a little bit realistic. We are not, like in COVID, we came slamming down and we came bouncing back up and it was all happy days. It's going to be slow and it will take time. We've got significant population growth, which helps, but everyone is really nervous. And it will take time for those interest rates to come down to a level where people feel more free about spending or for taking on more debt. Long term, they're not going to obviously come back down to where we were before. So I do think it's going to be a slow pickup. If you look at that in terms of consenting and residential development really relies on house prices. So a lot of that is going to come down to interest rates, but demand picking up in that market. We know we've got a big pressure on rents and on the rental market because of all of our immigration that's coming in. And that will take time. Our yields in Hamilton at the moment are about 3.5%, which isn't fantastic on the bigger scale of things. So as you kind of see, if rents can creep up, which also requires incomes to be a bit better, then you'll start to see a little bit more of a enticement for the investors to look at the market. It's a bit of a long game. But the demand's there, the people are coming, and we need to house those people. So there's always going to be that kind of challenge around we actually need more housing, but how that's encouraged, which is a bigger problem, I think, for New Zealand as a whole.
My next question. About 5 or 6 years ago, I witnessed in a number of cities, particularly in Canada, where multiple high-rise buildings were going on, apartments, and I had assumed they were all for sale. But in fact, the business model had changed. They weren't for sale, they were purely for rental. And the developers had the confidence that they wanted to retain the asset, and they were banking on an environment where People wanted longevity in renting, and that was their business model. In your view, is New Zealand mature enough to have moved there? Is it an opportunity? Because you raised the fact that currently a lot of the market is based on developers being able to develop, sell, which usually means house properties has to keep escalating. No one's focusing on what potentially is a niche market. Your view on that?
So build to rent is becoming incredibly popular in terms of interest levels within the property sector. There's a lot of stuff going on there. The Property Council has been bringing in people from Australia to talk about it, talk to developers about it. So there's a lot of interest there. In New Zealand, we have this assumption around capital gain. So there's a different thought process around those long-term incremental return on investment versus I want to sell this in 5 years and make 20% more. So I think New Zealand needs to mentally shift. I think it's a real opportunity for things like the superannuation funds, the KiwiSaver funds that are looking for long-term steady investment. So there's definitely opportunity there. It takes the right people with the right mindset to make it happen. And I think that's increasing. There is definitely increased interest, and there are more people thinking like that rather than just that quick win.
What could council do to help that? I mean, is it in your view an opportunity for council to reflect in its planning documents to incentivise developments that help that paradigm shift away from, we're developing, we're going to make our 20% in 5 years and we exit and we're on to the next one, to a slightly different approach? I mean, should we be giving remissions as a stimulant to address the shortage of rental properties? Would that make us a more attractive city?
Potentially. There's obviously the DC component and the remission component is a small part of a really big feasibility question. So it definitely makes council look like they are more supportive of it. And it can act as a, hey, we're really keen to support this kind of message to a developer. But in terms of being the tipping point between feasibility and going ahead or not, I'm not so sure whether remissions have that much of an impact, but they certainly send the message that, as a council, that's something that you want to support. There's obviously there's a lot of components to that, and I feel like Blair wants to say something.
Yeah, I don't want to step too far to the bounds of this committee, but I do know that Dr. Davies in the room, and Mark has had some meetings with parties who are in this field. I don't know, Mark, if there's anything you want to say. I don't want to sort of get too far out of the scope of the meeting here, but there's certainly, as Tiki has said, there are some big players showing interest. They are identifying some potential locations. They are talking to our team. Our district plan is reasonably supportive of what they're wanting to achieve. So I don't know, Mark, is there anything else I need to say? Yeah, sorry.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Max.
Thanks very much, Tiki, and despite a gloomy outlook, in the past, Hamilton has fared a little bit better than the whole of the country in general trends and performance. Is that still something that we're seeing?
Broadly, yes. We're definitely seeing greater levels of growth. Like we've seen a lot of job growth more than in other parts. As a general rule over time, we've seen higher levels of growth in terms of GDP, employment, all of those factors. At the moment, we've just dipped below. I think that's kind of reflective of the levels of growth we've had before, as opposed to all of a sudden we're not doing as well. And I think long term, there's absolutely no reason to think that it will be any different. Hamilton is on a growth trajectory that is slightly different from the rest of the country, and in a positive way.
And our position in the middle of that economic triangle helps to support.
Absolutely. I mean, Hamilton has got from a business and a logistics and a space. With between Auckland and Tauranga in that space, there's 2.5 million people. Like, there's a lot of people that you have such great access to within an hour and a half, 2 hours. Like, that proposition doesn't change unless we decide to move the city, which obviously we wouldn't. So,
not going
you know,
anywhere.
that strategic advantage remains, and it's still going to bring businesses to Hamilton. It's still going to make Hamilton a really attractive place. It's just the next couple of years, making those big decisions will be hard for some companies.
And I note in your report that you've got a fuller analysis coming to us soon.
Correct.
So we'll be able to get visibility over
Yes,
the bulk
it
of
will
that.
cover the 2023 year, which was looking a bit better, looked a bit better than it probably does right now. But it's the hard copy that we print, which is basically like everything you need to know about Hamilton's economy for 2023.
Cool. Thanks very much. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We need to keep moving along. I'm sure we could have lots more questions for you. Colleagues, that pretty much brings this one to an end, unless anyone has any questions for Sean on H3. Anna.
Yeah, just a question in regards to the visitation for the levels for the zoo. I know there's been some emails already on this topic, but we would. I was just wondering, Sean, if, and you, I don't think you. Oh, you might have the answer, but just in terms of what we're losing revenue-wise with the lack of provision for parking and also for public transport at the zoo, just some figures on that, and if we don't have those figures, perhaps if we could have a staff action to have a report back to us on what we're losing and what we could do about it.
Yes, thank you for the question. Look, I actually answered, I think, an email just recently to Councillor Sarah and Councillor Cash. I'm not sure if that went to all councillors through the LTP question and answer process, but look, on roughly around probably 20-25 days of the year, we suspect that we lose around 200 carloads of people because of a lack of parking. It's difficult for us to actually quantify that precisely. We could do some figures for you to give you our best estimates on what that means in terms of both visitation and potential revenue loss. For that, the question that we are challenged by is what are those days in the year that's not always consistent, and so some of the remedial fixes that we can do are difficult until the day actually happens. If the question is also coming out of the question about whether we should purchase additional land that's adjacent to it, yes, we would like to do that. We have no idea when that land would become available on the market or what it would cost. Could be some years away. So if you want us to do some indicative numbers, happy to do so. I would also remind you that we have a similar challenge at the Hamilton Gardens as well in terms of parking space, so it's not just restricted to the zoo, but it's the challenge of supply and demand. If you have curvy utilisation, do you supply for the top of the wave or somewhere midway through the wave? So it's a bit of a vexing challenge.
Yeah, it would be good to get some more definite or indicative numbers on that. Thank you.
Sure.
So if we can just have that noted as a staff action, but
Okay.
I don't know if you might have missed my public transport part of that. I would like that to be somehow looked at as well, like what do we lose? Because it's pretty poor public transport to the zoo. I think Louise tried to do that the other day. It takes a really long time, and I am concerned that we're also losing visitation through the lack of provision of public transport. And yet it's not our job, but I think it's still really important to our visitation numbers.
Yeah, I think I will struggle to give you some conclusive information on that all that easily, to be fair.
And I think we are beginning to stray from our scope, and I wonder if there's not better alignment with infrastructure and that transport role.
Well, it was a particular concern for visitation numbers, and that is relevant to here.
So
yeah.
You asked for two things. I
Yeah.
heard the request regarding visitation numbers, and the GM has the Deputy CEO has indicated that he will put some figures together. You then raise the issue of public transport and accessibility, and it's the latter that is out of scope of this meeting, but it doesn't negate your ability to raise it with your good colleague, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor, who's the Deputy? Councillor Nakendo. Right? So staff, you've got that note regarding so we've noted the first part. Anna.
Okay, thanks.
All right, colleagues. Are you happy with that, Sarah? I see you smiling. You're all good?
I originally emailed, that was the email that Sean responded to, but that's excellent because it just gives the opportunity for some more clear figures. So I'm very happy.
Which is all good, right? You're welcome. Okay, so item 9, it's simply that the Economic Development Committee receives the report. I'll move, seconded by Councillor Tim. Any debate? Councillor Anna.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Tiki for her report and also about the conversation about the housing and the consenting. I think that it's in this environment that we really need to consider the potential of our affordable housing developers and the different, they have access sometimes to different financial levers, and I think, when the pure market is falling as it is, this is the time where we look to those opportunities and see what might be possible. And I think, that developers like Simplicity that are interested in our city are something that, I know that we're working to look at and see if they have some opportunities here. I also just wanted to talk a little bit about the tech and the Tron, because what I noticed when I looked at the new website or the new page on the website about the living or Hamilton is a place to live and an attractive place to live for people who might be working in that space. It really highlighted how important, again, our public spaces are and the beauty of Hamilton and how important that is to economic development because it attracts people to our city. So I just think in terms of our LTP conversation and what we may or may not look to cut, that we must think about how attractive our city is to our young people, to people who are looking at their options, they're looking at whether they go to Wellington or Auckland for some of these tech jobs. We want to be able to attract them here, and our public spaces are so important to that. So I just wanted to, I guess, I noticed that in the promotions, and I just wanted to highlight it because I think we can't miss that intersect. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Chair Ewan. Hamilton population grew by 6,000 people in the last year. That's 2,400 houses. We've just seen that the new sections granted for these houses has fallen 51% to just 829. Those numbers don't match. I did tell Council this would happen a year ago. It was predictable. This is now more than affordable housing. It is about homelessness. Infill housing, we also see, makes up 71% of new houses. 6 months ago, I said Hamilton could be closed for business because half of infill sites don't have 3 waters capacity. I'm still waiting to see a policy on new connections, so it is going to get worse as infill housing crashes. What is the Council doing about this? Council is putting up resource consent fees. Council is putting up building consent fees. Council is putting up development contributions. And for those lucky enough to live in a house, Council is putting up rates. There are solutions to some of these issues. Cutting red tape would certainly help. The paperwork at the moment is crippling consent applications. I'd like to see some action on this.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I'll quickly comment on a few things. First of all, I want to just again express, and I do it every time, but I do it because it's right, and that is, again, I thank Mike and his team for all the work that goes on behind the scenes. I thank Arif for all the work he's doing in that critical intelligence gathering and relationship building area. There is no doubt Tiki provides an amazing insight and helps us understand what goes on, but more importantly is beginning to really help us to understand what's coming. And I think that's some of the points that Councillor Andrew has just articulated. I too am excited at the potential for Tech on the Tron and for that to continue to grow. And more importantly, that those employment-related increases as a result of success of Tech on the Tron are well-paying jobs. I would say that it's pretty clear we've got a challenging few years ahead of us. And ultimately, how we best approach this is up to the 15 people that make up this council. It's our job. And we are going to have a challenging time as we balance between issues of affordability to ratepayer, issues of enabling growth, how we balance our fees and charges, our revenue, and we are the ones that get to try to resolve that. The staff will provide expert advice, but it's up to us, every one of us. And ultimately, that's the way it should be, because ultimately, every 3 years, the people can decide whether or not we've got that balance right. So I'm not intimidated by it. In fact, I'm excited about it, and so should every one of you, because as we go into the LTP, we are going to decide how best we manage what we've just been warned about. We should be excited about that opportunity, and then we should stand by our decisions and see where they fall. Councillors, I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against?
Motion is carried unanimously.
Wonderful. Heading along, we are now on item 10, Event Sponsorship Fund. And so that's Sean. The report is attached and is pretty detailed. Just bear with me 1 second, Sean. Sorry. You introduce your report. Maybe you could remind this chamber that everything that's being discussed is obviously still subject to the LTP. I'll leave it in your capable hands.
Thank you, Chair, for the intro. If you don't mind, could I just make a wee statement before I talk to this particular paper? Mike Neal, when he was here with the HCBA, talked about the Joshua Tree concert going to Christchurch, Wellington and Auckland. Unfortunately, Hamilton doesn't have a venue for that particular type of event, but we will next year when the new regional theatre gets opened up, because it will be the optimal size and composition for that sort of a show. Sadly, we couldn't convince them to use the arena, which is a bit more awkward. So we would have had a crack at it if we could have. In terms of the Event Sponsorship Fund, this comes around every year, and you're all familiar with the process that we take each year through this committee. We put a notice out to the community and other partners or people of interest wanting to stage major events. We make them very aware of the criteria with which we guide decision-making against events, and as usual, we usually tend to receive more applications or requests for individual applications for money beyond what the budget provides for. As the Chair said, the budget that we have based the approvals on is in fact based on the draft LTP budget, which has and that will assume that there will be a reduction in the fund of $100,000 from what it was in the year that we're currently in. I don't think I should go through each application case by case. I would stress that some applications that you'll notice under the recommendations in 3C that be declined They have been declined either because they did not fit the criteria for it, or they were deemed to be too commercial to actually really warrant sponsorship from council compared to some of the other events that they were there. And in the case of Sunset Symphony, which is a favourite event of mine personally, it is covered, it is an activity that comes within the Hamilton Arts Festival in its own right, so it's a bit challenging when our budgets are so tight. The other thing that I'd like to raise is that for this agenda item we had to correct one of the attachments, attachment 3, which was providing you with a summary of events sponsored in the current financial year for 23-24. Unfortunately, the original version that went out had a whole lot of inaccuracies in it, which have since been corrected and are actually at the bottom of your diligent page to do that. And I would like to thank Councillor Anna Casey Cox for finding the error and bringing that to our attention. So chocolate fish for you. The other thing I would also mention on this sheet, and it's a correction, Chair, from a conversation we had yesterday, one of the events that had funding approved in the current financial year, which was Matariki Ki Waikato 2004, when we discussed this, you'll notice, for those of you who have looked at that sheet, that there's a funding approved for $50,000 and that $50,000 is yet to be paid. Chair, I apologise, I had it confused with another event that was a bit older, but that event is actually not taking place until June this year. So the payment, the reason they haven't been paid yet is that they haven't needed to claim the funds because it's a June event. So we're all kosher on that front. So look, happy to take any questions.
All right. I know I've got a couple colleagues. This was the item that I pre-circulated to enable elected members to engage directly with Sean if they had any questions, because it's a contestable fund and we have a policy around it. Anyway, Councillor Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Ewan. Sean, thanks for this. Can I just ask a question of clarity in terms of the process here? So, approving these today, are they still subject to what we decide in the LTP in a few months' time?
Yes, we will not be able to confirm the exact amount until the LTP, the total budget, has been validated.
Okay,
correct.
okay. So, and the second question to that would be, should we not be reflecting that better in the actual wording of the motion? Because at the moment the motion just says approves, and I guess, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, in B, if we were to have something along the lines of subject to the LTP.
You were
discussed at our meeting,
yes.
So
and that is happening.
That's what.
Oh, goody.
That's what.
I apologise.
No, no, you're right.
That's what we've done. Sorry, it was already.
Okay, so that's in there. That's cool. That's cool. No, thank you. That's.
Yeah, that's. I covered that at the beginning because that was a bit of a change, because I knew, that's why I said that it's all subject to the LTP, but I should have highlighted that we had made that amendment. Cool. Colleagues, so I've moved, seconded by Councillor Jeff. Any debate? No debate? All those in favour say aye. Those against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you, colleagues. Now moving on to item 11, strategic property update. Nicholas, lovely to see you.
I've just got a couple of verbal updates to accompany the report. The first relates to the Apoya Pa car park site. We had I think what was quite a constructive meeting with Ngāti Wairere a couple of weeks ago to work through the engagement with them and specifically the options for the development of the site. You'll recall there are 6 development options ranging from status quo, do nothing, right through to full development. At this stage they are, and following that meeting, they're indicating to us that the only one that they're really opposed to is the full development, but they're quite open to considering it.
the other range of options, so the 5 other options, and we've rescheduled a follow-on meeting for the 29th of April at Hukanui Marae. Sorry, May, yes, my mistake. May at Hukanui Marae to continue that conversation. In the interim, I have sought a quotation to carry out ground-penetrating radar examination of the site and the interpretation of that, just to determine what subsoil features of the original power site might remain, and that will be obviously part of the discussions that we have with Ngāti Wairere on the 29th. I also sought advice from Tompkins Wake on the nature and substance of claims that Ngāti Wairere may have lodged in various tribunals. It would appear that there is only the one, which is a Waitangi tribunal claim. Seems to be a fairly broad, all-encompassing sort of claim, and it does not appear to, at this point, include the Apoia Pa car park site. So again, that will be a subject for discussion on the 29th. Happy to take any questions on that matter. The other one really is the Bridge Housing Trust MEF investment in an affordable housing development, the Hinamoa development. Bridge have confirmed that they are very close to finalising a funding agreement to bridge the gap, which was left when the government withdrew or decided not to contribute to the project, and therefore we will reinitiate the loan agreement and bring that back to the MEF advisory group for final approval, that group having the delegated authority to approve the loan. So we'd expect that to happen within the next month or so. Again, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'll get the item on the table. I'll move the staff recommendation to simply receive the report, seconded by Councillor Mark. I'll now open it up for questions. Colleagues. Councillor Max.
Thanks very much. Just with regard to the Hinamoa development, good news that there might be an alternative to bridge that lending gap. In terms of the original $100 million fund that they had applied to through MHUD, is there the possibility that, given economic conditions, current day situations, that things may change and that fund may not be fully utilised? And is there then an opportunity for this proposal to circle back?
Look, I couldn't really comment with any authority on that, but my broad view would be that gate has now closed. Hinamoa are moving on with alternative arrangements. Those arrangements will be put in place and the development will proceed on that basis.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. It's well covered in attachment 3. There was a letter from, yep, okay.
Utilised, as sometimes funds that government put up aren't fully utilised, then there is the potential for those things to come back. But
I read it that they said it was fully utilised.
Indeed, as I did, but should a project not continue, as happens sometimes in the transport sectors, then, is that something that we might be able to?
In my experience, Councillor, with these types of funds, given they take a fair bit of time for that scenario to eventuate, they are generally not available for redistribution, in my experience. They are,
taken up as
future
savings.
budgets, saving is captured, and it's just start again.
Thank you.
Excellent. Colleagues, it's been moved and seconded. No further questions. Let's open it up for debate. I have no debate. No one else. Councillor Anna.
To Nicholas for all of his work and, all these relationships that are so, important to this work and how you navigate those is really impressive. So thank you.
I agree, he's wonderful. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against?
The motion is carried unanimously.
Excellent. So, colleagues, that was item 12 is to exclude the public. I'll move, seconded by Councillor Jeff. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against?
Carried unanimously.
Right, colleagues.